Hello, I'm Dan from Edimo Electric Bikes, and today I'm going to do a walkthrough of the new Smart System from Bosch. So we're going to talk through the new Bosch system on this bike, and we're going to go through each element one at a time, probably starting with the LED remote that we've got on the handlebars, then looking a little bit more depth at the Kiox 300 display, having a chat about the 750 watt-hour battery that we've got here, and also the 4 amp smart charger that comes with it, and then just touching on the motor that's got in the bike down here, which is a standard CX motor. So probably the most important parts that we're going to talk about today: LED remote and display, 750 watt-hour battery, and then we'll move on in a minute and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about the app that comes with it. So the whole system that Bosch have presented here, they've called it their smart system, and I think it's really all about them moving into the future of digitally connected devices. So they've launched it with the idea that you're going to be able to connect to a lot more apps. So at the moment on things like the Kiox and Nion, we'll be looking at connections into things like Strava and Komoot and all that sort of thing. The plan is that with this new system that Bosch have presented, they're going to move into lots of other things. I guess the reality of this bike that we've got here right now is very, very early days of it. So the connected side of it really isn't much at all. It's very, very basic. So it's more presenting the idea of the new system that's here, and then as time progresses, we're going to see the addition of all those new systems and integrations. So one of the most obvious things when we look at the bike with the new smart system is the display that we've got, and also something they've called the LED remote. There's very similar setup to the systems we've got at the moment with the Intuvia, Kiox and Nion, where we've got the buttons on the left-hand side to change the assistance levels, and then we've got a small display mounted in the middle. I guess the biggest difference that we're seeing across this is that the buttons that used to be on the display here in the center, so we would have had a power button and a light button, have now gone. So it's just a display that's in the middle, and those buttons have been integrated in onto the left-hand side into the LED remote. The screen is still removable, same as the previous one, which I'll show you in a minute, but it doesn't have quite the same features going across. So first of all, looking at the LED remote that we've got on the left-hand side here, what you'll see is we've got the power button is now mounted on here. Now, you might remember if you'd seen the previous remotes, on the top, hidden over the top, was the walk assist button. That's now been moved. It's down here, I'll show you in a minute, but the power button is on the top here of the LED remote. So to turn the system on, it's as simple as pressing it. We get a few lights and flashes and stuff going on, and probably one of the best things about the new system is the little startup screen that comes up on the Kiox 300 display. So if I press and switch on, you'll see all the lights starting to go. You'll see this one go up and down. You'll see the Kiox display light up saying Kiox 300. And then it comes up with the interface, I guess, that we're used to, which is the bit that's showing us our current speed and then the power that we're actually putting in, a couple of other bits, the power setting you're in, and also the battery you've got left. But essentially, I guess one of the most important things that Bosch is saying about this system is that if you want to ride the bike without the display at all, that's completely possible. And just to show you how, you literally unclip this here, and then when you switch the system on, it will switch on its own, and you can then ride your bike using all the coloured lights to tell you the assistance level you're in, the power that you're getting from it, and various other bits and pieces, and you can chuck your display in the bin and not use it. I guess one of the downsides of that is one of the features we got really quite used to was with our Kiox displays, Nion displays and Intuvia displays, we kind of used this as a security device. So when we parked up our bikes, the first thing that we would do is take the screen off, chuck it in our pocket, and then we'd go off and we'd lock it up, but we'd go away and sit down in the cafe, knowing that nobody could start the bike. So they could ride the bike, but they wouldn't be able to start it. And an additional feature we used to get was that we could lock this display, not this display, the other display, the Kiox display, to our motor, so that unless somebody had exactly the right display, they wouldn't then be able to start the bike. That's gone because essentially now, if I take this off the bike and lock the bike up, somebody only has to come and press the button and start it up. So I think that's a bit of a security flaw with the bike, but hopefully your bike's going to be locked up. And I guess the only thing you could do is to actually physically remove the battery out of the bike. So for some people, not having this display on the centre is a benefit, and I guess it's if you're riding a mountain bike and you're concerned about breaking something, or you just don't want to be looking at it. Well, at that point, removing this and sort of not taking it with you on the ride can be a bit of a benefit. If I'm honest, most people I know that own and ride these bikes at the moment, they all like the screen. It shows all the information they want to know. It shows them how far they've been, average speed, maximum speed, speed they're travelling at, the assistance they're getting. So I can't personally see, for the bikes that we sell, the benefit of not having the display on there, other than maybe a little bit of cost saving. So you'll notice that on the screen previously, on a Kiox screen, you would have had the two buttons here. So this is where we'd be pressing to either turn the power on and off, or we would be switching the lights on and off. All that function has been moved over onto this LED remote that's over here. And we'll also see that this isn't touchscreen like the new Nion is, so it's a very basic screen. And when I say basic, I don't know if you can hear this. It's a cheap plastic. It doesn't feel quite the same as the Kiox displays. I don't know if that's still like a Gorilla Glass screen on there. I assume it is, but it feels quite cheap, plasticky. But then maybe that's the intention. Maybe it's to keep the cost down. Looking at the LED remote on the left-hand side, there's a handful of sort of buttons and bits and pieces going on. There's some LED lights that are telling us all sorts of information as well. You'll see these little blue lines up the top here, apart from the top one. So blue little lines going up. These are telling us the charge of the battery. So on the screen, it says that we've got 87%. On here, it's telling us we've got 90%. Now, the way that we know that, each of these are in a 20% increment, and then when we lose 10% of one, it changes colour to, I'm not sure if that's a white or a pinky sort of colour. So we know that we're now down below 90%, but we're above 80%. So we can see our battery moving down over time. The next thing that we'll see on the colour piece is this little green flash that's going around here. The green flash refers to the fact that we are in the Eco setting, so that's the lowest power assistance level. We changed the power assistance with our plus and minus button, same as we would have done on the old controllers. So if I go down a setting, so this is now off, and you'll see that the green flash has gone on there. Go up one, green is Eco. Next one up is Tour, which is blue. Next one up is Sport, and then up the top is Turbo, most important setting. So you can tell at any time, without even having to look at the screen, you can tell which power setting you're going to be on just by the colour that's on the top there. Switching the lights on and off, it's a press and hold. So on the up and down button on the top, or the plus button, if we press and hold the plus button now, we're going to turn on the headlights, and the same again to switch them back off again. And then the bottom button is actually the walk assist. So the way that walk assist used to work was you would have to press the walk assist button on the top of the remote, and then you would, once it was started, you'd have to press and hold the plus button to get the bike to start walking. They've reconfigured that slightly so it works in a different way. So what's happening now is all you need to do, this I've got to try not to break everything in the shop and launch cameras everywhere, but we press and hold the button or the minus button, and then you can see this sort of trail of lights going up and down, but the bike isn't doing anything. Now it's really clever because all you need to do at that point is once you've pressed and held that down is to start pushing the bike, and as you start pushing the bike, it realizes it wants to have walk assist, and then it starts pushing it along. So it's a lot easier than the other one was, because we found that we were always trying to press this, click this, and it took ages to try and configure. So it's now as simple as press and hold this button, lights come up, it says on the screen you've got 10 seconds I think to get it assisted, and if I push this off, it's just going to start walking. Now the next thing on this display is we've got the left and the right buttons up the top here, and this allows us to scroll through all the different menus that are on the Kiox 300 display. There's not many, so the information on there is relatively basic compared to some of the older displays that we've got. So the starting screen is the power assistance that we're seeing, the assistance level, and the battery charge that we've got left. So let's just put it down into Tour. As we go across, then we're picking up all the other basic information as well. So at the moment it says we've ridden this bike for 12 minutes and 45 seconds. That would be me. I've done 2.5 miles, and right now I'm not going anywhere. The range that's left on it, this is interesting. So this is a 750 watt hour battery. So my guide as to the range that you would get on this bike is probably about 75 miles-ish if you were to ride it in eco. And then just pop up the power for the hills. Obviously it's going to have an impact as to the range depending on the weight of the bike, the gearing and the tyres and everything else that's going with it, and also the massive hills. So at the moment this bike is showing, if I put it down into eco, it's showing that it's got a range of 43 miles on 87%. That is awful, that range, but that is not because of the bike. I have literally taken this bike and I've ridden it straight uphill continuously. So it thinks that its whole life is going to be spent riding up a massive hill, and if we do that, it's going to get 43 miles out of it. As I start riding this a little bit further and we get some more decent distances riding on some of the flat, then we'll see that range will go back up. And I would expect around about sort of 75 miles-ish in the eco setting with a 750 watt hour battery. The other piece of information on the display is the percentage of the battery that's left, 87% in big numbers. Go across again, and it's going to give us two pieces of information. Power is going to be the power that you are putting in watts. And it's got a little dial that goes up as well to show you what you're doing. I think when I went for a ride earlier, I was averaging around about 150 watts. And the cadence it tries to guide you towards is around about 60 RPM at any one time. And then the last screen, as you scroll through the Kiox display, is one just showing you the time, and then it has the connection. So connection here, the little ticket means it's connected to my smartphone in my pocket. And I can press on this one to go into the various settings. Settings that are on the bike, there is nothing exciting at all, so you can just reset stuff and look at some really basic bits and pieces, so there's nothing in there to really go and have a play with. One of the features on this though, took me a while to find it. If I press the select button, which is this little one here, it goes down to another menu, so it gives me a little bit more information on that one display. So we can see my average speed on this bike is 12 mile an hour, maximum speed just over 30. Going across again, this one's quite interesting. So this one gives you all the information about the range that you're going to get in the various settings. So normally you would have to be in a power setting to see what the range is, but this just pops it all up in front of you. So at the moment 43 in eco or 22 in turbo, which is what we'd expect, kind of half the distance. Whoops. And then on to the last one, the power and the cadence. You can see my average power that I've been putting in, 141 watts, and my cadence about 68 RPM. So that's pretty much all the information that's available on the display. So it's quite a basic display. It shows you the basics of everything that you need to know, but it doesn't have anything like a sat-nav or any of those other sort of nice to have features that are on there. So that's the Kiox 300 display. So one other really nice little feature about this LED display that we've got here is on the previous one, it was fixed to the strap that goes around the handlebar, so there was only one position. You can now configure this. It's a really small thing, but it's quite handy to have, so that you can actually slide it, so you can get it any position on the grip. Now that means that you can slide it if you've got a brake and then maybe a dropper post lever and then something else. You can still push this right out to the side and it will sit over the top of them all. And once you've done it, there's just a little bolt to turn on the top there just to lock it into place. Quite a nice little feature. So I guess the comparison that I should make at this point is whether I prefer the smart system with the Kiox 300 screen and the LED remote to something on one of the existing bikes like the Nion system or the Kiox system that we got on the other bikes over here. It seems to me that when the Kiox 300 has been created, I don't know what happened to the other 299 versions of it, but the Kiox 300, they've designed it as the entry-level system, so maybe equivalent to the Purion that we'd have at the moment, where it is basic. You know, we know there's more features that we can have on these displays, like so for example the Nion display that we have on some of the other bikes, like this sort of thing. It's a far bigger display. It's got a touch screen so we can scroll through stuff. It's got sat nav on it. One of the really nice features of this display, and also the Kiox display as well, is we can choose the information we're going to configure to go on the screen. So as we scroll through, we can set up each of these little tiles to tell us different information. All of that's completely fixed on here, so there's no real adaptability. So thinking this is called the Kiox 300, I imagined it would be an upgrade from the standard Kiox display. Whoops. So this is our standard Kiox display. It's not much difference in size. It's maybe just a little bit bigger. But there's a lot more features on our standard Kiox display. So if I was to have a choice of, which one of these three screens to go for, then, I'm still going to choose the Nion. I don't have that in my number one on my options list just because of the sat nav, the ability to change, all the different tiles and the information that's on it. Secondly, I'd probably go for the existing Kiox display. And then thirdly, the Kiox 300. It just seems a bit plasticky, cheap, gimmicky. Still does a perfectly good job, but I'd just like the bells and whistles, so maybe I'd go for one of the other two displays. Having said that, moving on to the LED remote, on the other hand, this is nicer. It's got a nice sort of shape to it, so it's a far more ergonomically designed system with all the buttons on there. I love the LEDs. It's like having an 80s disco sitting on your handlebars, and who wouldn't want that on their bike? It's just really nice as you sort of click through and you see all the colour changes and everything. It looks cool. And I guess it's just a little bit nicer to use as well. So if I could have this with one of these screens, that would definitely be the option I go for. But I guess one of the big problems one of the issues that people are recognising with the smart system is it's not backwards compatible. So it means that we will never be able to use this LED remote with one of these screens. However, Bosch have made noises about there being further products that are going to be coming out, so we can look at this working with other motors. I guess they'll have it working with other screens as well, so then maybe make a few more in the range that go with the smart system. At the moment, my preference would have to be the existing system, just so I can use these. Although I do love the lights, maybe I don't love it quite enough to move away from the screens that I've already got. So one of the nice things, once you start riding the bike, some of this lights up and starts to look a little bit more interesting. So you'll see on your speed one, you'll see it sort of glows red or green in the middle with your little power thing coming up. And as you go over to the power and cadence, then you can see these dials going up and sort of getting to the point. They're in the amber stage at the moment, but as you get up to the peak position for them, so your power or your cadence, then they're going to start going green, and you know that's where you want to be. They're quite nice to sort of look at as you're going along. It's reasonably interesting for a nerd. So moving on to the next big part of the new Bosch Smart System is really the 750 watt-hour battery. So one of the key things that they've offered at launch with this system is that upgrade from the standard 625 watt-hour battery all the way up to 750 watt-hours. Now, I do wonder whether this is a bit of a cunning ploy from them, because I wonder if you had only the option of the 625, whether you would bother buying the smart system. But knowing that every single time Bosch release a larger battery, everybody just tends to go and buy it in their masses. So taking the battery out of the system, exactly the same as all the other ones we've had so far. So open the cover, turn a key, catch on the bottom, and the battery comes out. But this is a big battery. So here we go. So this is the battery, a 750 watt-hour battery, probably good for maybe about 75 miles on a single charge. So that's a big old bike ride that you're going to go for. The battery doesn't have any greater energy density, so it means it is a physically longer battery than the other ones that are out there. Still the same extrusion, so same shape as the other ones. I've got one I've made earlier, Blue Peter style, here. So this is one out of another of our bikes of a homage. This is a 625. This one, I don't know if you can see that, is a 750 watts. So you can see it's a slightly larger battery. Other than that, it's pretty much identical. Only one thing I have noticed, and I don't know if you'll see this, when I press this, the LED lights on the end are really bright. They used to be quite a dull green, but that's an upgrade. So just thinking about the price of the bike and the cost upgrade to having the Bosch Smart System, we'll use this bike as an example. This is a Riese Müller multi-charger mixed GT Vario. The upgrade to the version with the Smart System with the 750 watt-hour battery is about an additional £180 compared to the standard version that would have a Purion display and a 625 watt-hour battery. Looking at those costs, that's similar to the change between the 500 to the 625. So I'd say the cost is pretty much all in the battery. So about £180 extra to go up to the 750 watt hour battery. And then putting the battery back in is as simple as this. It's no lightweight thing. But here we go. Back up into the frame. There we go. All done. The other component within the new smart system is obviously the motor. Now the motor is a Bosch Performance CX motor, so it's exactly the same Gen 4 motor as we have on the current range of bikes. So it's the 85 Newton meter motor with 250 watts of power. The main difference about it is that what's been changed here is the connection ports that are going onto the side. So we are looking at a different set of connections compared to the other bikes, which means, again, this is not backwards compatible and it can only be used with the smart system. But nothing new here. It is exactly the same motor that we're using. So the other thing that has changed on the smart system is the charging socket. So there is now a different shaped charger to plug in. So if you've got a bike at home already with a Bosch system on it, you're not going to be able to use the charger you've got. Now, not a problem when you buy the new bike anyway, because it is supplied with a charger. So this is a new, slightly more curved, slick looking charger. But most importantly, it's got this different connector that's on the end here. Now, disappointingly, this is a 4 amp charger. So this is equivalent to the standard charger, the middle of the range one that Bosch do at the moment. They do a 2 amp compact charger for those people who are buying some of the lower end bikes. But normally on a Riese and Müller, if you get up to a twin battery bike, then they'll be supplying you with a 6 amp charger, or it's also called a fast charger. So this is a standard 4 amp. The question I have is, when you start getting up to a battery that's 750 watts, I imagine there's people who are going to probably want to upgrade their upgrade their chargers to a 6 amp fast charger. But at the moment, we can only get a 4 amp charger. So absolutely fine for charging overnight, not going to be a problem at all. But if you're doing lots of charging and lots of riding, then maybe you might like the fast charger if it existed, but it doesn't, so you can't have it. So one of the biggest benefits of the new Bosch Smart System is it comes with its own new app. It's called the Flow app. They previously had the eBike Connect app, but they've created a brand new app just for this new system. It's on the iPhone. Click it here and open it up, and it lets us go through loads of the different pieces of information that are available, and also make a couple of different changes to the way that the motor works. You see when you first open it up, it syncs to your bike. The bike needs to be switched on for this to allow this to happen, but as soon as it is, it'll do that. Then it will start pulling all the information from it and store it into your app that you've got here. It's pretty simple. It takes a few goes to get, or a few minutes to get it connected to begin with. You need to create an account for the Flow app. You need to obviously sync it onto or link it onto the bike using Bluetooth as well, and then the thing will fire up and ready to go. One of the big things they shout about is that this allows you to have over-the-air updates to your bike. So if there's any new software that comes out for your bike, this app is linked directly to the LED remote on your bike, and that is the control center to then sort of push that software onto all the other components that are out there. So there's no need to come into the bike shop, get plugged in, and for me to do an update anymore. We can do it straight over the air using your mobile phone. So there's a few different tabs along the bottom that we can look at. There's the home one, first of all, which is this screen. It's got various bits of information. It tells us the charge of the battery, the range that we've got left in the different settings. So eco is what the bike is switched in at the moment. Customizable riding modes. I'll run through that in a minute, but essentially click on it and we can go in and change how the dynamics of each of those settings works. And then the total distance that the bike has done and how much time that has been spent in each of the different settings. So you can see from this, probably about half the time in turbo and half the time in eco. And that was more because I was doing the test ride on the bike and I felt guilty that I'd only had it in turbo and it wouldn't look very interesting. So I put it in eco as I rolled back down the hill again. So that's that setting. Next tab along is then the maps, and obviously most important, it shows us down in here where we are, so where we are on their map. This is where the ride statistics appear. So if I go and do a ride, it puts a little loop out showing where I've been and it comes back to there. Next one along is my statistics, so the trips that I've done. We'll go through this one in a minute as well. And then the last one on there is the settings. And there's not really much, again, you can change on that, but we'll run through it. So starting at the beginning on the home one, the first bit that we can change in here is this custom riding mode. So one of the things that we had before on the Nion display was we could pay Bosch a fee, and I think it was something like £5 to £8, something like that. And they would open up an option on our Nion for us to be able to configure how it actually worked. So we could change the power settings at each one of the different settings on, or different assistance levels on the phone. They've included that same type of thing, but with a few more items that you can customize on the new smart system, and there's no cost. So this is in the app straight away as we go in. So all we do, we go into one of the settings. So let's go into Turbo. And we can choose the setting that we're going to change. So the first is the level of assistance during riding. So it's naturally set at 0, so we can take it all the way down to 5 down or 5 up, +5. So immediately probably +5 is what everybody's going to go for. The dynamic, so the acceleration, so we can decide how the power of the motor actually comes in. So again, if you're in turbo, people are going to probably whack that up the top and just say as soon as you hit that pedal, it's going to give you absolutely everything. Sometimes you might not want that. You might want to actually dial it back a bit so that as you ride off, it sort of eases itself in. Still gives you all the power, but it just eases itself in rather than being a big hit every single time that you go for it. Maximum speed, nothing you can do about this. So you can take it down. Maximum speed is set for 15 mile an hour. I assume it's actually set for 15.5, not 15, because UK legal limit is 15.5 or 28 kilometers an hour. But if you wanted, you could pull that speed limit down. So if you set it for, say, 9 or 10 mile an hour, the bike would only assist you to that level, which means that you would have to do more work beyond that. So it's, I guess, a way of getting more exercise. But again, probably just going to leave it as maximum assistance all the time. And then the last one is the maximum torque. So the motor that is in the bike is an 85 Newton meter torque motor. So it's the Gen 4 Performance CX motor. And I know that everybody who bought the motor when it first came out and it was launched with 75 Newton meters of torque, as soon as the opportunity to uprate it to 85 Newton meters came along, everybody came in, we plugged it in and we upgraded it to 85. And nobody has ever come back to me and said, can I put the torque down on my motor? But if you wanted to, there's a little thing here so you can wind it back down again so it's not putting out so much torque. It will save battery, it will get you further, but equally, so will running down the power setting as well. So going down sort of the Eco and Tour for those types of settings. So that's probably going to stay in Max as well. So once you've done that, you've changed the settings that you want, you hit done, and it will show up here. Let me just change one so it's just done, and it will say here that it's customized. So you can now go and customize each one of those levels of assistance that are in there. So it's a great toy to go and play with. Whether you can make it work to run specifically how you would want to, I doubt it from my personal experience. The settings that are in there from Bosch are absolutely superb. So going in and customizing it almost just seems like you're buggering about with something that was perfectly good to begin with. So leave it as it is my suggestion. One of the things that I have noticed, the bike that we have got is a Reese & Muller multi-charger mixed DGT Vario. So that means it's got the Enviolo hub with the belt drive on it. Now it's come to us with these settings on it. So Turbo, Sport, Tour and Eco. Bosch released something called Tour Plus, which was an additional mode that allowed us to have some sort of energy saving that was in there. I don't have an option in here that would allow me to change that and to set it up to Tour Plus mode. So I'm guessing that I've only got Tour mode. And the other mode that people quite often want is then EMTB mode instead of Sport mode. Now the bikes come configured with Sport mode. Normally that would be something that I could change on the laptop that I would have here when I plug into the bike. I would choose whether it's EMTB, Sport mode, and whether we wanted Tour Plus on it as well. There's no option for any of this. So this bike has come configured as standard Eco, Tour, Sport, Turbo, and no way of me changing it. The other thing in the software on the laptop that I would normally get access to is to change the crank length as well. So standard is I think 170, 175, maybe 170 millimeter cranks. We have an option to go for shorter cranks, so we can configure that. Again, there's no option for doing any of that in here. It might be to do with the fact that this is a Vario or an MV-Olo hub that's on this bike, so there's no option to change it. Maybe those options exist if we get a derailleur bike, but most of the bikes we tend to sell are belt drives with either roll-offs or Vario hubs. Which reminds me of another thing. At the moment, this system is not compatible with a roll-off hub. So most of the bikes that we tend to sell do have the roll-off E14 electronic shifter, 14-speed electronic gear shift on it. At the moment, the smart system isn't compatible with that, so you won't be able to have that option. And the other thing that it's not compatible with, as far as I can make out, is the HS version, so the high-speed bikes. Technically not legal in the UK, so it's not the end of the world. But if you are one of the people that are looking for a high-speed bike, then I don't think the smart system is going to be suitable for you either. So that's customizable modes. Moving on to the next section, the maps that are in here. Now, I would have thought as you move to the maps page, we're going to get automatically the sat-nav type integration that's on there. So the Connect app, that is the one that works with the previous generation of screens and motors, so the Kiox and the Nion. When you go into the Connect one, you've got a map, and then you can just use it like a sat-nav, like you would on your smartphone. You can enter in your destination and say go, and it will work out the route for you. And then depending on the system you've got, you can either offload it to your Kiox or you can put it onto your Nion so you can follow your sat-nav. Bizarrely, this one brings up your map, and a very nice map it is too. It shows all the sort of, well, it says on these, they're byways, I think, but I think they're actually the Route 45, so the Sustrans routes that are on here, these green lanes. But it doesn't give me any opportunity to put in a destination, so I can't use it as a sat-nav. All I can do is when I go for a bike ride, it will automatically recognise that I'm riding my bike and it will record my route. And when I go back onto the map, it will show me the route that I went. Now, I guess it's better than having to carry a map so you can work out where to go, but it just doesn't give me the ability to say, oh, you know, okay, I want to go over here, and it set it up. So it seems a little bit pointless. I'm sure it's something that will be coming with time. Yeah, but I've got plenty of other maps in my pocket, and I don't really need another one on this. Moving along, next tab on there is then statistics. So this is talking about the rides that we've done. Now, I've done more than this, but it's saying I've done 3 miles, which, you know, I'll take that, that's fine. We can see this one here that says Stroud Ride. So I live in Nailsworth, which is just outside of Stroud, so it automatically recognised it as this. Got this lovely little background here. It tells me that the ride I did was almost 12 minutes long. It was 2.5 miles and an average of 12.5 miles an hour. If I click on it, it will give me more detail about it. It will tell me where I went, which is useful. So I basically went down to the end of town, up to the football stadium at the top of the hill, rolled back down again and back into the shop. Tells me the time I've ridden for, the distance that I've done, my average speed, the ascent, so I did nearly 340 feet climbing, my average power, which was 134 watts, and then the cadence, so how fast I'm pedaling, so about 63 RPM. On the cadence, it's trying to sort of get you, to, I think, to about 60, which is the most efficient phase of the motor, or anything above that. With a low cadence, it tends to use more power from the battery, which would mean a slightly shorter range. The next thing as you go down, it then shows you the elevation, so you can see I went up a big hill and I came down a big hill. You can see my maximum speed, 33.3 mile an hour, not bad. Cadence, this is obviously coming down the hill, going back down to 0 and rolling. And my maximum power, so 412 watts. Only for like a split second though, so I'm definitely no athlete at all. Average power down at 134 watts. And that's the information that you get. So that's what we get to find out. Again, it's good, but it's nothing too wild. The last tag going along is then the settings. Now, the most interesting one for me on this, there's all the standard sort of stuff about, you know, setting up your profile, your name, and your, you know, login and all that sort of stuff, languages, all that basic stuff. But most important one, and the one I think that Bosch allude to in their release videos for this sort of thing, are the connected services, and say that this is where it really starts happening. This is where it gets exciting. Now, on the old eConnect app, we'd be looking at connecting in things like Komoot or Strava to try and get some more statistics and share our information, or drag in routes and sort of, you know, they're standard apps that people are using at the moment. Connected services on this, when I click it, I get Apple Health. So all it says is that it will share my ride data with Apple Health, and that's it. So there's no connection into Komoot, Strava or anything else. Now, I'm sure with time, all these things are going to get added and they're going to come in. But right now, as a system, it's almost sort of taken a step back from where we were with the systems that we already had. So through the eConnect app rather than, you know, using this Flow app. So not too impressed by that at all. Yeah, it's a, if I'm honest, it's a little bit lame. They could have done a lot more. And especially seeing as they've really pushed it as being this connected system, it's the future, it's the way that everything is going. If I'm brutally honest, I think that the one really big benefit of this system, it should have been the app. It definitely should be this piece that is the thing. And I think this is the big thing going forwards. Right now, the big thing about it is the 750 watt-hour battery that we're getting. So it's the new larger battery that's available. But then don't forget, if you go back to the current system that's out there, you could quite happily have two 500 watt-hour batteries and have 1,000 watt-hours, or you could have two 625s and have 1,250 watt-hours of batteries. So if you're after that larger range on the battery, then it is still completely possible with the system that's out there. It also has like sat nav built into it as well. Loads and loads of really good features, which this system just seems to be lacking at the moment. You know, don't get me wrong at all. I rode this bike this morning with this system and it was absolutely fantastic. Really, really nice bike. I love the idea of having 750 watt hours of battery sitting there. The apps function, they work, they do all the tricks that they should do. We've taken a small step backwards, but I'm sure we're going to take a big step forwards in the coming years. And we've got to get to this point, I guess, from Bosch's point of view, that they have moved on to a new system to allow themselves to do that. It's just not quite there yet.